Bill C. is from Torrance, California, and his home group is the Hermosa Beachman Stag. He will be speaking on spiritual condition. Let's get one for 45 minutes, followed by 20-minute Q&A. Bill, it is an honor and privilege having you here with us today. And thank you for setting aside the time to share your life with us. Welcome.
Hey, everybody, I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic. Good to be with you today. I'm in Los Angeles, Southern California, where we have voted weather out, so it's always very mild here. And it's good to be here with you. My sobriety date is March the 27th, 1985. And I am tasked with speaking to you about spiritual condition. Let's get one. It's my favorite subject. I think it's why we're here. This is what we're supposed to do. And where that came from is some time ago, just before the pandemic hit, the last trip I took before the world shut down as I flew from LA up to Sonoma in Northern California to speak at a men's banquet. And this gentleman picked me up. He's about my age, older guy. You can tell he'd been around AA a long time, very relaxed, very nice man. And we piled in his car and he's driving me to the event. And he asked me how long I'd been sober. And I told him around that time, it was 30 some years. And he said, well, I almost had 30 years. So you knew it was going to be an interesting little discussion. And he told me the story of being sober a long time, coming up on retirement, met his wife in AA, they've been married quite a while. Life's pretty good. And he's resting on his laurels a bit. He's just kind of coasting along. He hasn't drifted completely away from AA, but he's just kind of relaxed into his life. And he had a little surgery. Something happened. He had some surgery, and they gave him some pain medication. And on a particular day, he took a couple of extra, and then he ended up drinking. And at the time he's telling me this story, he's 2 years sober again, and he's got a commitment. He's driving the speaker around. He didn't lose everything, but it got pretty nasty, and it just really got my attention. It was like talking to myself, you know. It just really got my attention. And that night at the banquet, he was my host, so we were sitting at the same table, and we talked more about the whole thing. And when I got back to Los Angeles, I called my sponsor, which is shocking. I've had the same sponsor for 39 years, and I should have fired him several times, but he needs me now. I make him look good. So I called my sponsor and I said, Jay, how come you and I are still here? And he gave me an interesting answer, as he sometimes is wont to do. He didn't say it's because we work the steps so great, or, you know, any number of things he could have said. What he said was, you and I have never lost our enthusiasm for it. And that's true. I've never lost my enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I've been up and down. I don't get treated with the respect I deserve on a regular basis. And I get a little pissy now and then about this and that. And I have opinions just like anybody else does. But I've really never lost my enthusiasm for it. I enjoy AA. I mean, who knew that it was going to be fun when we got here? Did you think it was going to be fun? I didn't know it was going to be fun. You know, and I've had a marvelously good time in Alcoholics Anonymous all these years. Certainly, I've had my trials and tribulations. I went through a divorce. 7 years ago, I got a liver transplant. Alcoholism almost killed me at 30 years sober. I almost died. And life happens to us. You know, life happens. But I've never lost my enthusiasm for AA. I've never drifted away. One night I got pissed off at somebody in the Alano Club, and I went storming out of there like the hell with these people. And I stormed across the parking lot and literally stopped in the middle of the parking lot and said to myself, Bill, where are you going? Where are you going to go? And I don't know about you, but this is it. This is, you know, somehow we got to make this work. And the fellowship of AA is like any other group. The fellowship is something to be survived. You know, I mean, you're guaranteed to piss me off. You know, we got a room full of emotionally immature people that think they have alcoholic thinking, like they have some weird neurotic that we just never grew up. And we're like teenagers. It's like high school. We're just figuring out how to have relationships with each other, and we're a little late. So the chances of us doing that and looking good are pretty slim. So if I've got something to underpin the fellowship, if I've got a spiritual path, if I have a spiritual condition, then the fellowship can be like a warm blanket. I mean, but how do we get there? After I came back to LA from that trip and I called my sponsor and we had a conversation, I started writing some stuff down, and I really tried to put some thought into it. I've been sober a long time, and what's it all about? What's the end result? I mean, we can talk about the mechanics of working the steps. That's all well and good, but sometimes you can spend so much time on the menu, you forget to eat the meal. And what's the end result of this path that we're on? And I made some notes. And when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was 37 years old. I was on my second marriage and a second set of 2 children. And I had the emotional development of a very disturbed 16-year-old. And I have no idea about this. I'm just exhausted. I was quite ill. I was very ill. I was a lot sicker than I thought I was, but I felt really ill. And I went to this recovery place for about a month, and then they let me out. And the first day I got out, I went to a meeting. And I'd never been to this place. I looked it up somehow, and I drove to Hermosa Beach, to this Alano club near the coast on her. It was a beautiful summer day. It was April of 1985. And who knew that the meeting was going to be full on a Friday night by the beach? I didn't know that. All the Harleys were parked out front, and I was kind of intrigued by that. And I walked into the room, and it was packed, and it was a meeting called the Gong Show. And it was crazy. Everybody was dressed up trying to hook up. This is not what I was expecting. I mean, this was a party on a Friday night in the summer down by the beach in Southern California. These people were just hooting and hauling. Nicknames are flying around. One guy got up to the podium. They hooted at him so much he just sat back down. Clearly a very loved individual in the room. It was all very lighthearted. They were counting the steps off. A lot of people said that meeting wasn't really an AA meeting. I went to it for 20 years. I walked in and saw you, and the lucky thing that happened to me is I heard the music right away. I wouldn't have described it that way that night, but I stood in the back of that room and I didn't feel part of because I wasn't. I didn't know anybody. But I started laughing. You were funny. And one of the ways that you can tell if you're alcoholic is if you start laughing in AA, because they don't get this humor down at the Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club or the Elks Lodge or anything. They don't get it. I mean, we laugh at the tragedies and cry at the successes. It's an odd humor. It's different. It's kind of a dark humor, and if you're inside of it, you get the joke. If you're not inside of it, you look at people like, what are they, nuts? And I stood in the back of that room and started laughing. And I drove home that night and said to myself in the car, this may not be so bad. I wasn't expecting you. I wasn't expecting to laugh. I wasn't expecting any of that. Now, sometimes when I'm in a room, I'm speaking somewhere and I'm talking and people are laughing, the crowd will laugh. And you look around and you see the people in the room that aren't laughing. And those are the people you want to go hit on and find out what's going on. How come you're not laughing? Are you new? Or maybe you're not new and you're just miserable, and wondering why going to meetings and stuff isn't working for you, And second thing that happened is after a couple of weeks, I asked this guy to help me, and he actually did. That's the lucky thing that happened. This guy actually helped me, which doesn't always happen, right? One of the things he said to me that night when I asked him for help is he says, I want you to go home and read the doctor's opinion, make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock and we'll discuss it. And I did that. That's the collapse of the alibi system. When we talk about hitting bottom, what that is the collapse of the alibi system, because we have an explanation of why we are the way we are. And that explanation falls apart just for a little bit. There's a window of opportunity where new information can come in, where we're not defending our position anymore, just for a while, because it comes back. And I went and I did what he told me, and I showed up at the stranger's house Thursday at 5 o'clock, and he let me in, and he didn't trust me that I'd read it, and he's had me sit there and read it to him out loud. Now, that man and I have done workshops over a good part of the world, and a lot of times what we'll do is we'll do a workshop on sponsorship. And rule number one when you're sponsoring people is make sure they read the book. Don't trust them. Read it with them. Maybe it'll help you. And, for 39 years, I've been doing that. If I have to read War Fever Ran High in that New England town one more goddamn time, I think I'm going to blow my head off. Now I'm doing it on Zoom, right? It never stops. It never stops. So each week I went to his house and we read another chapter in the book, and he guided me through the process. And he told me a couple of things that still hold true for me today. This is all new information to me at the time. He said, my job as your sponsor is to guide you through the process of the 12 steps, that you might have some kind of spiritual awakening, and maybe you'll never drink again for the rest of your life, because that happens here. That actually happens here. Now, I would be happy to sit here and listen to you tell me what you think your problems are, so that you will not share about them in the meetings. He said, the meetings are for recovery from alcoholism, not about how your day went. And I told him, down there at that Alano Club, they're breaking that rule right and left. Should we go tell them? He said, no. He says, AA is a safe place. You can pretty much come in and do whatever you want. Nobody can kick you out. He says, I'm just describing to you my Alcoholics Anonymous, the way I see it. And I agree with him, So anyway, when I sat down and wrote some notes down after that guy talked to me in Sonoma, the first thing that this man wanted to know from me when I walked into his living room that day and read that book out loud to him was whether I thought I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. Now, for me, that was an easy answer, because I was really beat up. I knew I was going to drink and use again, but I really didn't want to. But I always had before. I had no confidence in my ability to stay sober. So I was a little frightened, and I was very, very tired, and I was very ill, physically very ill. It was hard for me to get around. And so I was pooped. But 39 years later, powerlessness has a much deeper meaning to me. It's much, much more than drugs and alcohol. I think it's everything, don't you? I think I'm literally powerless over everything. I don't think lack of power is my dilemma. My real dilemma is I think I have power and I keep asserting myself. I don't think I am the author of my life. And we are raised and taught that we have to make stuff happen. I don't believe that anymore. I think it's unfolding right in front of me all the time. All I need to do is show up and take advantage of what's being presented. I talk to you incessantly about how if you were a little bit different, the two of us would be a hell of a lot happier. And you insist upon living your own life and at my core. So I have no power or control over people around me, although I try. But I don't have any power over you. I've lost complete control over the geopolitical situation in the world. Look at it, right? It doesn't matter what side you're on. It's literally insane. And it pretty much always has been. But I don't live there. 4 years ago, I shut off the TV news because I wasn't emotionally stable enough to deal with it. And I realized I was just as polarized as the people I think are idiots. So I shut it off, and I've had a couple of slips. It's hard to do. You get sucked into all that. But I don't live there. No one from Washington, D.C. has ever called me and asked me what I thought should be going on there. Right? I am not part of the conversation. So I shut it off because I don't live there. I live here with you. I'm an AA guy. I live in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is where I live. And I don't have a whole lot of power over this either, although I try, but this is where I live. So powerlessness has a much deeper meaning to me today. I think I'm utterly powerless. If I can do the powerless thing, the second step then becomes operational. Just the drugs and alcohol thing. The second step becomes operational. I need to be restored to some kind of sanity through, obviously, clearly, logical thought progression, some power that's greater than me. Now, when I came into AA, I had a problem with God, like most of us do. Even if we believe in God, we have a problem with it. We don't understand it. We want to understand it, you know. And I was an atheist. You know what an atheist is? An atheist is someone who creates a God and then doesn't believe in it, right? So once you can see the insanity of that I'm as polarized as the people that believe in God that I think are idiots, then the logical thought progression comes in. I need some power because I can't fix myself. I can't fix me. I love the line that you hear in AA sometimes. Sometimes I still hear it from time to time. All you need to know about God is it's not you. I think that's really valid. And I think AA is a really good higher power, if that's all you can deal with, because I walk into the room and I see it operate. I don't have faith. I believe in it because I see it, because you're sitting here with me. And I don't know of anybody that got sober, you know, through this process that believes that they got themselves sober, right? I mean, we might hide that. We don't want people to know that we think that. But the truth is, on March the 27th, 1985, something touched me. Something outside myself touched me. What else do I need to know about that, right? And the longer I'm sober, the more significant that day becomes. So then the third step becomes operational. Like some people will tell you you have to believe in a God to do this. No, you don't. All you have to do is know it's not you, that there's something, you need help. That's all. Bill Wilson wrote about this extensively, about having an open mind. Just have an open mind. Then the third step becomes operational. Now, the third step's interesting. The third step says that I'm going to turn my life will over clearly to what already has it anyway. I think it was really nice of them to lead me to believe that I actually have some say in the matter. Well, I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. Where's my trophy, right? And we have these long-winded discussions about the difference between my will and God's will, as if that's possible. Talk about an egoic concept. My little ego, the 2.5-year-old, loves the idea of us having a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe. And we wonder, don't we? We wonder, I wonder what God's will is. I'm going to answer that for you today. It might be worth you showing up to this meeting to hear this answer. I can tell you specifically what God's will is. God's will is what's happening right now. What else could it possibly be? And I have trouble with what's happening right now. I'm looking for an alternative, and there isn't one. This is it. This is what we get. This is how it is. The next step is acceptance, right? Which is much more of an art than a science. But I think life beats us into submission. Soon, finally, we just finally accept. We don't have to like it, but we have to accept what's going on. Here it is. We stop the struggle. And what life and will is the third step talking about? It's the inventory, isn't it? The end result of living a life with seeming power. I have resentments, I have fears, and I have broken sexual relationships. That's what I bring to you. That's what I come. That's the end result of living my life with me in control, is resentment, fear, and broken relationships. And I write that down. And I share it with this sponsor, this God I don't believe in, and me. Here's my stuff. I'm pooped. You take it. And what's the lesson? If the first pillar of spiritual condition is powerlessness, what's the second pillar? In the inventory, the second pillar is I have to stop blaming other people and institutions for my problems. High school is over. It's time for little Bill to take responsibility for his own life. Now, this is going to take a while because part of who I am is who I blame for who I am, right? And my first inventory was the entire federal government and specifically the Department of Motor Vehicles. Who are the hell are they to tell me whether I can drive or not? I am oppressed by society. You know, I hate cops. I hate everything. I'm just I don't even know that I'm afraid. I think I'm just really angry, you know. In that first inventory, the fear list wasn't very big. The one I did at 10 years was very comprehensive, you know. You learn some stuff when you're around here for a while. So the second pillar is I have to stop the blaming. Then we move on and we get into the amends process, right? which is essentially how you address your character defects, you know. And what we were looking for in that inventory is the fourth column of that resentment list, right? What are my faults and mistakes? It doesn't say what was my part. It says, what are my faults and mistakes? That's what we're looking for, because we're powerless over other people. If there's any power at all, which is debatable, it would be over ourselves. If we have enough self-awareness, maybe there's the opportunity to begin to behave differently. But I certainly can't control your behavior, because the way I live my life is I think things outside myself need to be different in order for me to be okay. Right? And what are the odds of that happening? You know, when you start behaving different, then I start feeling better. I don't think that's how it works. You can ask yourself, how's that working for you? If that's your position in life, that things outside me need to be different. It just doesn't work like that, right? The amends process, you want me to go to these people that I resent, that I'm angry at, as a mechanism for ridding myself of that resentment. You want me to make amends to these people, and I am not doing that. That makes no sense to me, and it scares the hell out of me. I just want to move on, forget the past, and move on, right? Well, one of the things that Alcoholics Anonymous has created, that they really got from the Oxford group, from where we stem from, is the whole amends process. This is where the life-changing event really begins. This is when we change the dialogue. When we go to make amends, it changes the story we've been telling all these years. This is the breakdown of all of this. This is the ending of the alibi system, right? When I go to somebody that I don't ever want to see again, and I look them right in the eye and I tell them the words that need to be said, when I turn and walk away from that experience, I am changed right then and there. No waiting. It's a cathartic experience. That's the term for it. The action of doing that will change me as a person. This is where people stop. This is where they stop. This is when I have a conversation with somebody that tells me I'm 19 or 20 years sober and I'm not sponsoring anybody. I can't meditate because my head's too busy. You know, I've got problems. So the first question you ask them, have you made the amends? And you get an answer something like this, well, I'm making living amends, which means no, I haven't made the amends. Do we make living amends? Of course we do. After we make the amends. No one who has made their amends would ever say, I'm making living amends. They would say, yes, I've made the amends. Because you can't forget that. You know, I went to my father and I made amends to him and I didn't think I wanted to. I just knew that I had to. And I went out in the car and I broke down sobbing, and it was like something reached inside of me and pulled all that rage out of me. Changed my life. Changed my life. And what's the lesson in the amends process? This is the big one. It's the third pillar of spiritual condition. Nothing was ever personal. But boy, it sure seemed personal, didn't it? I mean, the story we tell, it's all about it being personal. The universe is focused on me, screwing with me. You know, it's their fault. It's that teacher in the third grade that slapped me in the face. It was my dad when he had my head shaved when I didn't want to cut my hair. It was all of this stuff. We have a whole list of things why we are the way we are. Nobody was focused on me. I was just in the blast radius of other people's behavior. They're just doing what they do. And sometimes you're in my blast radius. I'm not focused on you. You're just the next victim in line. I'm just doing what I do. I'm not focused on you. No one was ever focused on me. Doesn't mean that nothing happened. It just wasn't personal. And when these three things come together in this spiritual path that we're on, this is not a comfortable path. When these three things come together, I'm powerless. I'm beginning to get a handle on that I am really powerless. I have to stop the blaming. I haven't stopped yet, but I know I shouldn't be doing it. And I've surrounded myself with some pretty healthy people that are helping me stop the whining, you know, and it's going to take a while, but I can begin to see it now that I need to stop doing this. And then I begin to realize that nothing was personal. This is the collapse of the egoic structure of who I think I am. This is my personality falling apart. This is not necessarily a happy moment. There comes a time in this spiritual path where you reach a point where you say, oh my God, it's me. It was never them. It's me. And this self-awareness without humor is depression. You know, sometimes the appropriate emotional response is depression. And I know people suffer from it, but sometimes we feel bad about ourselves because we're just not good. We haven't been good. I had a lot of regret when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I did some awful stuff. I don't feel good about myself. And for me to come around to feel good about myself, it's going to take a while, right? Now it says in the 10th step, it says the only thing that's going to save us is the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So my job, as it says in our little title of this talk today, my job is to get one of those. I'm a new person in AA. My job, I don't have a spiritual condition when I get here. The first thing I have to do is get one. I have to work on getting one, create one, so that I can then later on maintain it. I can't just walk in and get spiritual. It doesn't work. Certainly hasn't worked that way for me. The other thing it says in that paragraph is that we're going to rest on these things called laurels, and that we shouldn't do that. One of the definitions of a laurel is a past achievement. I didn't have any past achievements. So my job in AA now is to create some achievement so that sometime in the future I can rest on them and find out why that's not a good idea, right? So it's going to take a while, right? As far as I can see so far, it's taken me 39 years, right? I can look back over the 4 decades I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous and see the phases that I've gone through. First 10 years, I was trying to make a name for myself in an anonymous organization. I figure if I'm going to be here, I want to run it, you know? So I'm clawing my way up the AA corporate ladder, you know, trying to get myself into the hierarchy, of which there is none. But that's all I had to work with, and it served me well. I did some work, and I fell in love with you in the process. The motivation changed after some time. 20 years sober, I got really sick. The liver disease was catching up to me. I had gotten healthy in AA, riding bicycles, riding the Centuries, lost 100 pounds. I saved my own life, right? And then it caught up to me. The Hep C caught up to me, the interferon treatments and stuff. And I got really sick, and I started meditating with intent. And what I mean by that is I need help. I knew I couldn't change my situation, but I needed help. I needed help growing up. I needed help to get centered. I needed help to stop struggling against what was happening. And it helped. It helped. So 1 through 9, those first 3 pillars, 1 through 9 is about 10% of the program. It's not the work. 90% of Alcoholics Anonymous, 90% of the program is 10, 11, and 12. It's where we live. That's where the real work is. The first 9 steps we have to do in order to develop a message with some depth and weight so that we can really get into the real work in AA. The most important 5th step you'll ever be involved in is the first one you listen to. Then that's when you realize why you're here, right? Why am I here? Is this a self-help program? I don't think so. Do we get help? Yes, we do. But it's not a self-help program. It's a selfless program. It's about getting out of self. It's not about going into myself. It's about literally stepping outside of it, realizing that who you are is not your egoic mind. It's not the persona that you've created that needs to be defended. That's the human condition. We talk about our heads in the third person, don't we? We say, my head is out to get me. You know, we make it adversarial because that's who we are. It's not trying to hurt me. It needs me for transportation. It thinks it's me. I think it's me too. I'm in collusion with it. You know, I mean, it make a plan and I go, yeah, let's go do that. Right? Because I think that's who I am. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I think he was wrong. It's part of the human condition. It's not the enemy. The ego simply takes the past and projects it into the future over and over and over again. It's flat and two-dimensional. It creates nothing. It just takes credit for stuff, right? And it comes up with a game plan. It doesn't like to be in the present moment because there's nothing for it to do. So we get into 10 and 11, which is the 4th pillar. The 4th pillar of spiritual condition is self-awareness as compared to self-obsession. Being able to watch yourself move through life. Now, in meditation, you can watch yourself think. You can sit quietly, get comfortable, take some deep breaths, get some oxygen to the brain, and focus your thinking mind on the breath going in and out of your nose. Now, when you do that, you'll realize that the ego doesn't like being in the present moment. There's nothing for it to do. And it immediately wanders away from the breath. And you notice it has wandered away. So you gently bring it back to the breath. This is an experience that is a game-changing experience. This changes the whole platform. Everything changes when you realize the truth of this. That evidently, the essence of my being is not my thinking mind. It's not the enemy. It's not an alien creature that has invaded me. But there's something within me that actually can watch it think. Now, I wonder what that is. I wonder what that is, that watcher. Because I've experienced it. If you've meditated, you've experienced it. It's a fascinating thing. Evidently, I don't have to necessarily go where the thinking mind wants to take me. Now that I'm onto it, right? And I realize it's not the enemy. It's just flat and two-dimensional. But there's another consciousness within me that is much more creative, much more aware. Some people call it the spirit or the soul, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. But I can visit it. The more I do the meditation practice, the more I exercise that muscle. Self-awareness is the key. Anthony DeMello said, self-awareness is everything, you know. He said, what he said was, he says, you don't want to wake up, you just want relief. And aren't we the relief people? We're the relief people here, aren't we? Yeah, we know how to get relief. We can escape from reality. We know it. We're very good at that. But now we're on a path, we're not doing that anymore. Now, how do we deal with this world that we have a difficult time dealing with? Self-awareness. Self-awareness. And I believe that that's what connects us here. Now, every spiritual path that I've gone down, I've read the books, I sat with the gurus and stuff, every path I've gone down, all the mystics talk about powerlessness, that we are powerless, that we aren't running the show. And it's about connecting to that power, whatever that power might be. The mystics don't try to define that power. The religionists define the power. That's what they're all about, is supporting the organization. But the mystics, no matter what discipline they come from, all talk about this openness. And that's certainly been my experience. And in meditation, I can stop the struggle. I can't change my life circumstances. And I think what acceptance is stopping the struggle, stopping the argument against what's happening. I don't have to like it, but I can stop struggling. And that changes everything. I think within that, I've reached a point, and I know many others have too, where your opinion of me just doesn't matter that much anymore. And the reason I know that what's happened is because my opinion of you says more about me than it does you. Therefore, your opinion of me says more about you than it does me. It's human judgment, and we all do it. I just try not to give it any energy anymore. But it is an aspect of my nature. I judge, I look at people, but I've been wrong so many times, I just don't give it any energy. Someone will walk in a room and they'll be dressed a certain way and I'll say, oh, he's one of those. I don't know that guy, never spoken to him, but I've pigeonholed him, right? And it's happened to me a lot in AA. I'll tell you something, when you start sponsoring people, whatever prejudice you have will walk across the room and ask you for help. And if you want to hang on to the prejudice, send it away. And there's a lot of people here that'll tell you that. I don't work with people on medication. I don't work with people that are drug addicts. So pretty soon you just get people that look like you know? And what I've been taught, the way I was raised, you take them all in, let them all in, because they are the teacher. You want to change? Start sponsoring people. That'll change you. You want to address your character defects? Sponsor people. You'll run into every one of them. You know, it's like, so this guy walked across the room and he asked me, he says, I really need some help. Will you sponsor me? I think I should tell you that I'm gay. And I said, well, wouldn't you rather have a gay sponsor? He says, no. He says, I got the gay thing down pretty good, but alcoholism is kicking my ass. And I remember standing in the room thinking to myself at that time, I will never forget this right now. This, you know, and when you hear the truth, it rings like a bell. Now, you may want to reject it, but you got to work at it when you hear the truth, you know. And I got very close to that guy that changed my life. And that's happened dozens of times, you know. And self-awareness. Now, the final pillar is a big one. Now, I've got character defects, I've got problems, but I'm not stupid, right? I'm not stupid. I don't, if you meet somebody in your life that's a real asshole, you can bet they don't really want to be that way. They just can't help themselves, right? They're stuck somewhere. They're stuck. And that's the way we are. We come in here and I've got my problems, but I'm stuck. I don't know any different, right? So what has happened? I can't see the things in me that are missing. I can see the arrogance. I can see the pomposity. I can see the bully behavior. I can see all that stuff in me, and I don't care for it. But I can't see what never developed in me. And there's a big thing that never developed in me, and I think it's true for almost all of us. Some are worse than others. I lack compassion. I'm so self-centered, I can't feel you in my life. All my relationships are arrangements. They're not real, they're not a two-way street. And at some point in this process, he or she will stand in front of you and look at you and say in one fashion or another, you are not emotionally available for me. And when that was said to me, I looked at her and I go, what the hell is the matter with you? I'm standing right here. And so we start doing things like, you know how women are. They always want to talk. They're always emotional. We're problem solvers. We're from Mars. They're from Venus, you know, which I think all of that is just bullshit. That's an explanation for why I'm so insensitive, right? So we stand out in the parking lot, all the guys, and talk about how those women and how they are. And then finally you step out of the parking lot and you come into the meeting. And one of the things that Hermosa Beach Men's Stag says, we are man school. I had a guy walk in the meeting one time years ago when I was new, and he started whining about his wife or his girlfriend. And these guys in the room started clapping till he stopped. And I thought, whoa, where am I now? What's this place? Because we don't want to hear about you whining about your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever it might be. It's all the same stuff, you know, blaming them for your problems. High school's over. It's time to grow up and take responsibility for your own life. So I lack compassion. So what's the mechanism in this spiritual path that we're discovering, talking about, that generates the compassion? Sponsorship. Now, the first thing that happened to me when I walked into there and I asked that guy for help, he showed me compassion. I didn't know what that was. And why is he spending so much time with me? Why is he doing this? Weren't you a little suspicious why people were so nice? You know, I was a little suspicious. I've never been in a place like this before. And they're having compassion for me. Maybe they're doing it out of a sense of duty. Who knows? Doesn't matter. But that guy really tried to help me. And I wasn't paying him or nothing. I mean, this is just compassion. This is him carrying the message and training me to do the same thing. This is what you're going to do. Because he knew what I know when you come to me when you're new, that somewhere down the road, you're finally going to get it. But it's not going to happen right now. You know, if I can get you through an inventory, you'll stick around for a while. If I can help you into the amends process, you could stay sober for the rest of your life. If you start sponsoring people like I'm doing, you and I may become the best friends either one of us have ever had. We'll be like family together because we're on the same mission. We have the same purpose. You know, I've been given a purpose in my life that I never had before. I'm very clear about what that purpose is. Yeah, sure, I'm a speaker guy, but if I'm not doing the real work, what do I have to talk about? What am I talking about? If I'm just telling you funny stories about when I used to, you know, I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's about recovery, right? You know, and we can argue about what I'm recovered or recovering, which is kind of silly, don't you think? Who cares? You know, here I am right now. Here I am. Let's not get into semantics about it, trying to define it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Is there a right way or wrong way to work the steps? I don't think so. I think if you're doing it okay, right? And if you do it wrong, you'll figure that out later and do it over. I certainly have done that. I've learned a hell of a lot in 40 years about how to work the steps. You know, I've had some people that I didn't agree with, and then I started doing what they were doing. I went, this thing works. You know, you can do it deeper. But the inventory is important enough to do poorly because you'll always do another one. So I started working with you, and my motivation was to look good. I'm looking for devotees, not follow. I want followers. I'm going to build my own little empire here, because that's just the way I am, right? But what happened to me is I fell in love with you, and it didn't matter what my motivation was, because when you interrupted my life, when you entered my life, it disrupted everything. And I realized I need to be disrupted. I need to be inconvenienced, because in and of myself, I won't go to your house when you call me at night. I won't answer the phone when it rings because I'm watching my favorite rerun of Law and Order. I'll make those kinds of choices. I've got to paint myself in a corner to where I can do things that make me really uncomfortable and bring about change in my life. And you have always been the change engine in my life. I reached a point, I was married, I had a couple of kids, I had a business to run. I couldn't go to 18 meetings a week anymore. That didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I didn't get here to hide out in AA meetings. I go to meetings because I like them. I always go to my home group because I try to run it from behind the scenes, but they're on to me now. I have another meeting that I go to. I got a couple of Zoom meetings. I'm retired now, so I can do more AA. It's great. But there was a time where my program was sponsoring you. And you called me all the time. I could answer the phone. You called me all the time. I'm coaching soccer. You would show up to the soccer field if you wanted to spend time with me and help me set up the cones for the practice. And we would sit and talk thing. And I filtered you into my life. I ran a business. I did a lot of things, but I've never drifted away from AA because I love it. I love it. And you have opened my heart. You invited me into your life and I went. And I invited you into my life and you came, sometimes very inconveniently. My wife is 34 years sober. We've been together 30 years. She's 4 years sober, and she sponsors a lot of women. I sponsor a lot of guys. We have that house. Every July, we have a party for her birthday. July birthdays. We opened it up years ago, and there's like 200-300 people show up to our big backyard. And we have this party, our local community. Now, we try to keep them separated. Given the gene pool, we don't want them mating too much. And Karen will say to me, that guy, Ricky, is he okay? And I go, no, Karen, none of them are okay. It's like, keep your girls away from my guys. They want to get them sober. It's like, and we have all that joking. We sit out in the hot tub and talk about our sponsees. What a great life. We talk about the other. What happens around here, especially with compassion, is the sense of self gets smaller. It never goes away because we're human beings. It gets smaller because the other becomes more intriguing. And, I'm pretty sick to death of analyzing myself. I don't do inventory after inventory anymore. I'm not that interested, really. But you, on the other hand, are absolutely fascinating, right? And that sense of self gets smaller, so there's less self to be centered around. I think that's how it really works. There's less of me to be centered around. It never goes away. We're humans. We don't have alcoholic thinking. We're emotionally immature. And as you grow up emotionally, you become less self-centered. That's what happens to people when they grow up. They're less. You ever met really nice people in your life? And they don't go to AA and stuff. That's because they're less self-centered. Like we talk about them like they're aliens, like the earth people, like there's something wrong with them, like we've got something special. No, we got a problem. And the problem is, the solution to our problem is the spiritual path that we're discovering, that we're talking about. Let's get one. How do you get one? By doing AA. And I think the significant thing, the primary thing that brings about this spiritual change in us is being an active and involved sponsor to people. And what that looks like to me today is when I do an inventory, I share it with my sponsees because I want to break down the hierarchy. It's not about me being the sponsor and you're the sponsee. It's about us being on this path together. And you're as significant as I am. And I trust and love you, and I want you to know everything about me. I don't want to be a secret anymore. I don't want to be a phony. I don't want to be the guy that sounds really good, but he's not really doing it. That's what I've been most of my life. I do not want to be that anymore. At 10 years sober, I was the phony AA guru, and my life collapsed around me. I crashed and burned, blew up my family, And I did an inventory after that, would have killed a lesser man. Because I knew by that time, when you're 10 years sober and you behave like that, who do you blame? Who is there to blame? You know, is the alibi system still in operation? No. I knew it was me. Thank God I didn't drift away because it was a very painful experience. I had a lot of amends to make in AA for my behavior. And I came out the other side of it, and I think I'm better for it. And one of the things that happens when that happens in your life is everything's on the table. Everything, everybody knows everything about me. There's no more secrets. Sometimes that's embarrassing, but it's also called freedom. I don't have to maintain some kind of persona that's bullshit. You know, this is what you get. Yeah, I'm a little arrogant. Yeah, I'm a little pompous. It's okay. I look in the mirror. I like what I see. I think I'm okay, even with my flaws. That is what makes me three-dimensional, right? And I believe the same is true about you. I can be compassionate towards you and know that you're along a path, you know. I've learned my wife and I, 30 years together, we're more in love today than we have ever been because we have real intimacy in this house. And part of that is honesty, openness. I'll leave you with this final thought. They say here that you got to give it away to keep it. No, that's not true. You have to give it away to get it. That's how you get it, is by giving it away. Thank you very much.
My name is B, and I am a grateful recovering alcoholic. Thank you so much, Bill, for a beautiful message. And this is the Q&A, so this is your time to shine, people. Jackie, come on in with your question, please.
Hi, I am Jacqueline, and I'm an alcoholic. And Bill, thank you so much. I'm in Northern California, and I just can't even tell you how much I appreciate your share. I'm looking forward to listening to it once the recording comes out. And if you would not mind listing those pillars again, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Powerlessness. Stop the blaming. Nothing is personal. Self-awareness. Compassion.
Beautiful. Thank you for that question, Jackie, and a beautiful breakdown of that, Bill. And Oliver, come on in with your question, please. There we go.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill. You blew my mind with that, you know. I've not felt that on fire or excited since early recovery a while ago. So that really did it for me. I had a few questions and a few notes. Something you said about God really cleared up a lot of stuff for me. I've got two questions really. I guess I'll ask the second one. I just want to know a bit about what your step 11 practice is like, because obviously you did speak about that meditation in the form of like, you know, like the mindfulness. But you also spoke about, I don't do reams of inventory anymore. I don't know. That's just one thing where I like to know what people do, and someone like yourself, some of the things you said, I'd love to know what you do. If there's time, I'd love to ask another question as well, but that's my question. So thank you.
So the time I've been sober, I've gone down a lot of different paths. A friend of mine, Wayne, and I went on a real spiritual seeking thing and started listening to people like Baba Ram Dass. He was still around at the time, and I'm an old hippie, so it made it easy to listen to him. And you know, Alan Watts became something. I read some Alan Watts, and it just lit me up. Sometimes you'll read some. I remember sitting up in the middle of the night, and Watts said this thing, and I paraphrase it, but so I don't quote him exactly, but I think I improved upon it. And he said that true faith is not knowing and having that be okay. And I always felt that faith was having a belief mechanism that somebody gives you, or you grew up with it, or somehow you cobbled it together, and that you have faith that that belief mechanism is correct, right? And what Watts is saying is something more powerful. It's having no belief mechanism, like embracing the mystery and having that be okay. Essentially, all is well, no matter what you think. Now, I have trouble with that, but I believe that. There's certain things that really ring true for me. the other thing is that when Bill Wilson wrote the book, and it was primarily him, there really weren't several authors. It was Wilson himself sat down and wrote that thing. And at that time in the late 30s, that spirituality and religion were one and the same. And when you read the book, you can see that. And we agnostics, his argument is for a specific kind of God that you can actually communicate with and have a personal relationship with. And he did not want to put in the paragraphs in his story that talked about choosing your own conception of God. There's 4 paragraphs that a guy named Hank Parkhurst put in there because there was a huge argument about how much God to put in the book. They weren't arguing whether there was a God or not, just how much this was a selling tool. And Wilson was against putting that in there because we all know who God is, right? Years later, he said, thank God we put that in there. Because later on in the late 40s and 50s, the Eastern guys started coming to the United States, and the whole framework of what is spiritual began to change. That definition, because we learn more, we learn more stuff, you know? And I think that has really opened the door for people like me that have a trouble with that kind of God that you can beseech and communicate with. There's more of the oneness of all things, or the unicity of stuff, or the connectedness. And to me, here's my practice. I go down that rabbit hole because I love talking about it. At 20 years sober, I got really sick and I started meditating with intent, I needed help. And I gave myself permission not to be disciplined because I'm not a disciplined guy. I tried the discipline of getting up earlier in the morning and sitting cross-legged in one place on the floor. And as soon as I miss a day, I just quit. You know, I'm that guy. I'm not really structured. So at 20 years sober, when I really needed spiritual help, because I'm a self-reliance guy by nature, I'm that guy. I make shit happen, you know? And I knew that wasn't working for me. And I would hear people talking about having a personal relationship with God, and I did not have that. I wondered about that. I worry about that. And I didn't have discipline. So I gave myself permission not to be disciplined. I said, just do it every day. Do it every day. You know, sit and meditate. Try and try praying every day. You know, prayer to me is an admonition that I'm powerless. I need help. It's a ceremonial kind of a thing. What am I praying to? Who cares? I don't care about that. I'm showing I need help from somewhere, from something. And I don't need to define that. Because the argument about whether there is a God or not is all in the conceptual world. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we experience it. And the experience is much more important and more powerful than whatever concept I might create around it. So for a long time, I just meditated every day. And if the phone rang, I answered it. Clearly, the meditation's over. If it was meant to go longer, the phone wouldn't have rang because I'm not running the show. You know, if a leaf blower fires up in my block, I don't have to go to the city council and have leaf blowers banned from the city because it ruined my meditation. What I realize is that sound that I hear is in the same space I'm in. There's no separation between me and the sound. Am I going to judge the sound as negative and allow it to ruin the meditation? Or am I going to go with it and realize it's in the same space I'm in? I love stuff like that. That makes really good sense to me. You know, the whole idea of you ruined my meditation is giving you power and me the power of judgment. There's no ruining anything. Things just are. This is the way things are. Like I'm a car guy. You know, if I'm meditating in my backyard and I hear a car going, is that a V8? Is it just big mufflers or has he got a big cam in it? You know, I'll go like that. And that's where my mind drifts away. Then I come back to the breath. Because the car didn't disturb me. I just went with the car because it's in the same space. So that's my practice. I try to do it every day. I'm not always successful. The other thing about my practice, if you call it that, is if you meditate enough, the present moment has a texture and a feel to it. Because you spent some time there, so you know what it feels like. And in meditation, maybe it only lasts a few seconds, but you know what that feels like. So during the day when I'm not in the present moment, I recognize I'm not there and I can return to it at will. because I know what it feels like. It's like when you call me and we're talking on the phone and I'm talking to you on the phone. While I'm talking to you on the phone, am I playing a puzzle on my computer? Or am I really connected to who's on the phone with me? Sometimes I'm playing a puzzle on the computer, you know? Sometimes that's it, you know? Sometimes you're boring, you know? It's like, but sometimes I can catch myself and just be present for the experience that I'm having. That's meditation. The present moment is meditation. And there's different forms of meditation. I've practiced a few, but just getting quiet, getting centered, being in the space, you know, stopping the struggle. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for enlightenment. I just want the struggle to stop. So every day I try to do that.
Beautiful answer, Bill. Oliver, you had a second question?
There's a few hands up, really. Do you know? I think maybe go to them. To be fair,
Okay,
I'm gonna
whatever.
I'm gonna
You're
connect.
welcome.
I'm gonna try and connect with Bill, so hopefully I'll be able to ask a few questions in the chat. So yeah, let people go. Thank you though.
Beautiful. Thank you, Oliver. All right, Rasa will be our last question. But first we have Bill Swan. Come on in, Bill, with your question.
I'm glad I'm here, Bill. Thanks again. Wonderful job. So the question is, what is the danger? You know, emulation or imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. But what is the danger if I take one of your experiential truths that I can't authenticate it and regurgitate it on another platform? It seems like there's a bunch of early sobriety people that have 39 years of experience and it doesn't line up. Am I then in danger of, like Ed Mutum said once, professing a belief and then when I need to draw on it, it's not there? Does that make sense?
Well, the stuff you just heard me say, I stole from 100 different other people. It's like we all learn from each other, don't we? I think there's very few things that are original in Alcoholics Anonymous or really anywhere, really. You know, sometimes I'll speak someplace and somebody will come up to me and say, Eckhart Tolle? I go, absolutely. It's like, yeah, you could hear that, you know. Scott Redmond was a good friend of mine. Some of you may have heard Scott Redmond, who's a speaker in AA. And I spoke one time down in San Diego, and the guy that was escorting me out to get thanked, the guy said, Scott Redmond was here last week. I said, was it that obvious? He goes, oh, hell yes. You know? So, you know, I'm a product of all the people that came before me. Howard Polins, you know, Sandy Beach was a friend, and you know, you learn from people. You know, I said, like, you're asking me questions. Now I'm in the people ask me questions. I ask them questions. I get answers. I listen to them. Sandy Beach one time was at the Brentwood workshop and he held the big book. This is the Pope of AA, right? He held the big book in his hand like this and he went, this is not the truth. And I went, oh my God, what's this? And he said, it's a pointer towards the truth. So if it's in pointing, I should understand it really well so I can see where it's pointing. But don't mistake it for the truth, right? And I love stuff like that, you know. There's a little bit of heresy in it, you know, because in AA, we try to dogmatize the book. We count the number of musts and how many commas there are. One of my favorite ones, I heard this guy say one time, there's no amen at the end of the 3rd step prayer. The amen doesn't come until the end of the 7th step prayer. So that means everything in between is a prayer. And I remember I almost burst out laughing in the room. I go, you know, that is spending way too much time reading shit, man. It's like you apply importance to things that really aren't there. But we're human beings. That's what we do, you know. Now, I'm a big book guy. That's what I do with guys. I sit and read the book with him. You know, people want to come and talk to me about non-duality. If you're like 10 or 20 years sober, we can have that discussion. If you're a new guy, we're not going to get lost in shit like that, you know. I mean, when the guy's getting ready to do his 3rd step and he says to me, he says, I say to him, are you ready to do the 3rd step? And he says, no. I go, why not? He says, because I have a problem with God. I say, so do I. Let's pray. You know? And he says, well, I don't even believe in God. I tell him, I've done this several times, which is kind of nasty. But I go, nobody really does. We're all just whistling in the dark, hoping for the best. And I've run out of options. So what do you say we pray? You know? Now we can get into philosophizing, but like the guy asked the question, what's the danger of repeating some of the stuff? I said, well, you're just repeating stuff that other guys have told me before, and I've cobbled it together and kind of put my own little label on it, you know? So feel free, use it. It's all for free, you know? Send me a royalty check.
Excellent, excellent answer, Bill. And thanks, Bill, for a great question as well. All right, our last question for the day is Raza. Come on in, Raza.
Thank you, B. So, I mean, Bill, it's just amazing. I have no problems understanding that life just happens and is bigger than I am. I'm just a cog, not eccentric. However, I lack a way to explaining. I can't explain it to others, so I'm asking you here to help me. How do I explain to the common bystander that universe, regardless of the events, is not there to get them?
Some of the concepts are really hard. They asked the Dalai Lama, what's the ultimate spiritual truth? And he said, all is well. And then he pauses because he knows you don't believe that. And then he says it a second time very slowly, all is well. I have difficulty with that, but I believe it's true. What we do in that acceptance of the way things are is we add a moral quotient, because we know what's good and what's bad, right? Well, to go deeper with that, there's no morality in nature. We add the morality. That's an intellectual concept of right and wrong. That doesn't exist in nature. Things just are. The lion eats the lamb, and we have so much trouble with that because we don't think it's fair. We think the lion shouldn't eat the lamb. So we make up a fantasy land. We say that someday in the future, when things are good, because they're not good right now, the lion will lay down with the lamb. And I bet if that happens, that lamb will be nervous for eternity. It is the nature of the lion to eat the lamb. There's no right or wrong about it. It's just the way things are. And we look at the world today, we see threats everywhere. We see conspiracy theories. You know, there's a movement around the world that I don't agree with, you know, there's nothing I can do about that. I mean, I can do my own little personal social protest. I can express myself. I can send money to people I agree with. I can do stuff like that. But I don't want to be part of the problem. I don't want to be screaming in the street. You know, things just are. We think it's the end of the world. Everybody's thought it was the end of the world since the world started. You know, it's just the way things are. I live here with you, right? So it's a struggle daily to accept things the way they are. So what I've done is I've eliminated some of that struggle from my life. You know, I just don't participate in that stuff. Just quickly, I know we're running out of time, but when all the insanity started happening, the political insanity of some years ago, I got sucked into it on Facebook, and the people started calling names. And there's people that I've been sober with a long time, and I find out their political position, and it changes the way I feel about them. It changed how I felt about them, and I got into some pissing matches with people. My sponsor said, "Get the hell out of there, Bill. You don't belong there." And I did that. I got out of it. I said, I can't live, I can't do this. So there were several people in AA that I've done service with, that I've done, and people that I've known around the country, and I know their heart. I know these people are good people, and they heartily disagree with my position. Am I going to allow my feeling towards these people that I know from a heart level, using my head to ruin those relationships? And I thought, no. So there's one couple in AA around here locally. We saw each other at a function, somebody's memorial, and they were clearly avoiding me. And I walked across the room and hugged them and made them really uncomfortable, which was kind of cool, you know. because I thought, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be avoiding people in AA. God, of all places, AA is supposed to be a safe place. It's supposed to be a safe place. And so I've just bailed out of some stuff. But acceptance is difficult. It is difficult because I have judgments and I have what I believe to be morally correct positions. It's like, and I can't totally eliminate myself from that, but I can eliminate that dialogue from my life as much as possible I can do, and just accept things the way they are. It doesn't mean I have to agree with them, but I have to accept it. This is the way it is. If that guy gets elected, am I going to move to France? I don't know. It's like, I've had conversations with people. One guy told me yesterday, he goes, I'm thinking Ireland. I think I'm going to Ireland. Really? He says, why Ireland? That's where alcoholism came from, buddy. It's like, I'm sorry it went on so long.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bill, for a beautiful Q&A session, and everybody that participated, absolutely fantastic.